There are moments in the dusty pages of history where the clash of opposites brings forth a new reality. A millennium ago, the walls of Constantinople, the heart of the world, were defended not by Romans, but by towering strangers hailing from the wild fjords of the north, the Varangian Guard. In the upper galleries of the Hagia Sophia, an ancient runic inscription remaining upon the marble balustrades to this day tells it all. Halvdan was here. What business then could a Viking warrior have in the most sacred sanctuary of the Christian world? In the year 988, Emperor Basil II, fearing the betrayal of his own generals, sought a force whose loyalty could be secured through gold. This 6,000-strong army of axes from Kiev was entirely foreign to the intrigues of Roman politics. They were no longer merely raiders. They became the emperor's very shadow and his unwavering axe. In this volume, we shall unveil the legendary Harald Hardrada's ascent to the Norwegian throne, with the vast fortune he amassed in the streets of Constantinople, and the tragic fate of the only army that stood by the emperor as the city was plundered in 1204. The Chronographer archive begins this profound examination of a loyalty written in blood. If you have taken your place, do not forget to like and subscribe before we reveal these records. We are a nascent channel, and your support is of great importance to us. Thus, if the axe shadows of Miklagard are ready, we are opening the record. The year was 987. The Byzantine Empire was in the throes of one of the darkest civil wars in its long history. Young Emperor Basil II stood precariously, facing not only foreign adversaries, but the very blades of his own army and his most ambitious generals. Powerful commanders like Bardas Phocas and Bardas Skleros had set their sights upon the imperial crown, marching their forces to lay siege to the capital. For Basil, a grim reality was laid bare. His own soldiers had become his greatest threat. Every footstep in the palace corridors echoed with the threat of assassination. Every whisper carried the scent of betrayal. This impasse forced Basil into one of history's most extraordinary alliances. The emperor turned his gaze far beyond the intrigues of Rome, toward the wild and frozen lands of the north. The message sent to Prince Vladimir of Kiev was clear. I require an army to save my throne. In exchange, a promise was placed upon the table that had never before been granted to any barbarian: marriage to a princess of the Imperial bloodline. In 988, when Vladimir's 6,000-strong Varangian contingent crossed the Black Sea and reached Constantinople, the citizens beheld a sight they had never before witnessed. The men who disembarked were towering figures with flaxen hair, wielding axes nearly 2 meters in length. They appeared less like a disciplined army and more like a force of nature designed for pure destruction. For these warriors, loyalty did not depend on complex political balances. It was forged through sacred oaths and the weight of solid gold placed in their palms. When these 6,000 axes descended like a hammer upon the rebel generals at the Battle of Abydos, the Byzantine elite learned a bitter lesson. For these northern warriors, retreat was an impossibility. As the rebel leader Bardas Phocas perished mysteriously upon the field, the Varangians did more than defeat their foes. They tore them asunder. This victory became the first blood-red seal marking the Varangian Guard's place in Byzantine history. From that moment on, it was not those of his own blood who stood by the emperor's side, but these foreign giants. The price of betrayal was heavy, and the cost of loyalty was a handful of gold. After the blood-stained fields of Abydos, the era of Miklagard, the great city, had truly begun for the Varangians. This world bore no resemblance to the mud and mire of the northern fjords. Here, every corner exhaled the scent of gold and marble. The common people, observing the giants' penchant for wine, secretly christened them the Emperor's wineskins. Yet none possessed the courage to utter such words to their faces. Men passed them with trembling caution. They were no longer merely soldiers. They had become the unbreakable shadows guarding the Emperor's bedchamber and his most private sanctums. The standing of the Varangians far exceeded that of the Roman legions. They upheld an ancient tradition called Politasvarf. Upon the death of an emperor, they were granted the right to enter the imperial treasury and take as much gold as their arms could carry. This singular privilege meant that a few years spent in Constantinople could amass a fortune vast enough to forge an entire kingdom in Scandinavia. Yet, even such magnificence could not dispel the melancholy of the north. The words Halvdan was here, etched into the marble balustrades of the Hagia Sophia, remain as silent witness to their foreignness and solitude within this immense city. For them, Constantinople was never a home, but a golden citadel where they reaped the price of their loyalty. Now we turn our gaze to the most legendary figure of this bastion, Harald Hardrada, a man who began his journey as a mercenary and rose to claim a crown. Without a doubt, the most ambitious, formidable, and calculating figure in the history of the Varangian Guard was Harald Hardrada. Arriving in Constantinople as a young prince, exiled from the Norwegian throne, he possessed nothing but his blade and his burning ambition. Yet, through his sheer military brilliance, he swiftly ascended to the command of the contingent, projecting Byzantine might from the shores of Sicily to the sands of North Africa and unto the very gates of Jerusalem. Hardrada was no ordinary warrior. He was a tactical mastermind who viewed the battlefield as a theater of grand strategy to force the surrender of besieged cities. He devised methods as ingenious as they were merciless, binding incendiaries to the wings of birds and unleashing them to ignite the thatched roofs of his enemies. The Byzantine emperors rewarded this brilliance with the greatest prizes history had ever known: solid gold. During his years in Constantinople, Harald amassed a fortune so vast it defied the imagination of his contemporaries. His true masterstroke, however, lay in how he secured this wealth. Despite the stringent prohibitions of the empire, he covertly moved his gold back to Scandinavia in fragments, orchestrating one of history's most daring transfers of treasure. When the hour of his departure finally arrived, he was no longer a mere guard. He was a financial and military titan prepared to claim his own kingdom. In 1066, when he struck the shores of England, he carried with him the martial discipline of Byzantium and the accumulated wealth of Constantinople in his coffers. He would be etched into the annals of history as the last Viking king. Like all empires, Byzantium began to wither from within, and the unwavering loyalty of the Varangian Guard was destined to face history's bitterest trial. The year was 1204. The Fourth Crusade had veered catastrophically off course. Constantinople, besieged by its own brethren in faith, was engulfed in flames. While the city's populace fled in panic, and the Byzantine aristocracy negotiated behind closed doors to save their own lives, the axes of only one contingent continued to gleam upon the walls and within the palace corridors. The Varangians were living out one of history's greatest ironies. Against the Western knights who had come to pillage the city, the final force defending the honor of Rome was these northern giants of Western origin. As the Crusaders breached the walls and surged into the city, the Varangians fought mercilessly in the palace hallways to their very last man. For them, it was no longer a matter of coin. It was a matter of honor that had endured for centuries. Yet, the sack of 1204 dealt a mortal blow to the ancient glory of the Guard. After the city fell to the Latins, the very fabric of the Varangian structure changed forever. The freezing, pure-blooded Viking spirit from Scandinavia gradually gave way to Norman and Anglo-Saxon soldiers arriving from England. The wild energy that once roared from across the seas had faded, replaced by a weary bureaucracy of mercenaries. The age of the axe-wielding giants was preparing to yield to the thunder of gunpowder and the approaching footsteps of a new world order. As the Varangian Guard gradually withdrew from the grand theater of history, They left behind far more than mere chronicles of bloody warfare. They stood as one of the most intriguing conduits ever forged between civilizations, and as one of history's most profound examples of strategic adaptation. The linguistic remnants still surviving in Scandinavian tongues, the awestruck depictions of Miklagard within the Viking sagas, and the silent runic inscriptions etched into the marble of the Hagia Sophia remain as the living, breathing witnesses to this colossal encounter. The saga of the Varangians serves as proof that even the most savage force, when wedded to the right system and vision, can be transformed into the world's most disciplined defensive bastion. The gleam of Viking axes within the intrigue-laden palaces of Byzantium is the ultimate testament to how unpredictable and technically complex the process of history truly is. They were not merely mercenaries. They were the very embodiment of that fine yet sharp line where two separate worlds merged into one. The icy exhale of the north remains suspended forever upon the walls of Constantinople and within the collective memory of history. History is not merely a dusty narrative hidden amongst marble columns. History is a high-performance power machine, and we are but the technicians deciphering the blueprints of its engine. Today, we have decoded the silent steel at the heart of Byzantium, the Varangian Guard. We have observed that loyalty is not an emotional virtue. It is strategic hardware, forged through precise compensation and calculated isolation. The Varangians served as the most formidable human firewall ever erected by an empire against its own internal viruses of betrayal. Yet, this video is merely the tip of the iceberg. If you seek to understand the kinetic physics of those legendary double-headed axes, how Harald Hardrada hacked the Byzantine treasury to facilitate his escape, or the forensic analysis of the cryptic runes within the upper galleries of the Hagia Sophia, we have synthesized this entire strategic archive into our ebook, The Emperor's Shadow, the Algebra of Allegiance. You can access this technical manual via the link in the description and continue mapping the lost blueprints of power alongside us. Remember, the archive is always there. You only need to follow the correct protocols to access it. I am the Chronographer. Until next time, do not forget to explore our channel and follow our journey. We are redefining the narrative of history. Farewell.